Hey everyone, welcome. So today we've got a really fascinating explainer lined up for you. We're taking a highly technical economic report and, well, translating it into a clear visual narrative about global capital flows. If you follow international markets, you already know there's a massive shift happening right under the surface. We're looking at exactly how money moves across borders, and specifically, we're tearing into a huge anomaly between the economies of Brazil and the United States. Grab a coffee, because the data we're unpacking today is absolutely wild.
Okay, 9.75%. Just let that sink in for a second. This is a massive, near-historic figure. As of April 2026, this is the real interest rate spread between Brazil and the US. In the world of macroeconomics, a gap this wide, it's literally a glowing neon sign for global investors. It absolutely dictates where billions of dollars are going to flow.
So, let's dive into this. Why is the real interest gap between Brazil and the US so incredibly wide right now? To understand the sheer scale of this economic mystery, we really have to look past the surface-level headlines, right? We need to break down what this gap actually means for the global economy.
Before we solve the mystery, let's quickly set the stage. We've got to distinguish between nominal rates and real rates. Nominal rates, well, they're just the sticker prices you see in the news. In Brazil, that's the Selic rate. In the US, it's the Fed funds rate. But those sticker prices don't tell the whole story, do they? Because they completely ignore inflation. Think of inflation as this hidden tax on your returns. The real rate is what you actually earn after that hidden inflation tax is skimmed off the top. It's the true measure of your purchasing power.
And that brings us to the crucial concept here, the spread. It's simply the mathematical difference between the real rates of two different countries. Now, why does this matter to us? Because a wide positive spread acts like a giant magnet. When a country like Brazil offers a massive real return compared to the US, global investors rush in. They execute what's known as a carry trade, basically borrowing where rates are cheap and investing where rates pay out big.
Section 1. The April 2026 Anomaly. Let's see how this builds into our current situation by looking at the hard data collected on a very precise date, April 29, 2026. This data snapshot captures a completely unique moment in global monetary policy. To calculate these true returns, economists use something called the Fisher equation. Let's just walk through it step by step for April 2026. Step 1. In Brazil, with a Selic rate of 14.75% and inflation at 4.14%, the actual real rate sits at an impressive 10.19%. Step 2. Over in the US, with a Fed funds rate of 3.75% and inflation at 3.30%, the real rate is a tiny 0.44%. Step 3. Subtract the US rate from the Brazilian rate, and boom, you get our massive spread of 9.75 percentage points. And this brilliantly illustrates the reality on the ground right now. The staggering contrast between these two economic environments is just immediately clear. Brazil is heavily rewarding capital, while the US return, once you adjust for inflation, is barely hovering above zero.
Section 2. Historical averages and extremes.
Now we have to ask, is this current gap truly unprecedented, or is it just a normal part of the economic cycle? To figure that out, we pull back the lens. What's really interesting about this methodology is how it isolates the true historical average from 2006 to 2025. The researchers used a trimmed sample. That means they literally threw out the two absolute highest and two absolute lowest outlier years, the chaotic global events like 2020 or 2022. By cleaning up the data, they revealed a robust, normal historical average spread of 5.48 percentage points. So comparing our current 9.75 points to that clean historical average of 5.48, we can see that the April 2026 spread is essentially 4.27 points higher than normal. While this current spread is heavily elevated and sits in the absolute top tier historically, ranking roughly number 1 over the last 20 years, statistically speaking, it's actually still considered part of an observable cycle. It's highly elevated for sure, but it's not mathematically broken.
Section 3. The return to normal scenario.
Which leads us to a fascinating thought experiment. What if the market stabilized tomorrow? Let's look at a data-driven scenario to see exactly how much things would have to shift. If the spread magically returned to its historical mean of 5.48 points today, the implied Brazilian Selic rate would need to drop all the way down to 11.07%. That is a huge, dramatic shift from the current 14.75% rate. It just goes to show how much extra weight, or premium, is currently baked into the system right now.
Section 4. Strategic risks and drivers. So why is all that extra weight even there? What are the specific strategic forces and risks keeping this interest gap so unusually wide? Well, the research points to 4 key macro drivers. First, a domestic fiscal premium in Brazil. Essentially, investors are demanding higher returns because of uncertainties around public debt and inflation expectations. Second, a heavily restrictive Brazilian monetary policy. Rates were hiked to 15% recently, with very slow cuts since then. Third, U.S. Fed rate cuts. The U.S. has aggressively slashed rates down to the 3.5% range, automatically widening the gap. And fourth, geopolitics. Global conflicts, especially in the Middle East, have pushed oil prices above $100 a barrel. That imports inflation globally and forces countries like Brazil to keep their rates high just to protect their currency.
So the crucial point is perfectly captured in this quote from the report. The current spread reflects a purposefully restrictive monetary policy amplified by fiscal and geopolitical risk factors. It's not just one thing, you see. It's a perfect storm. Local fiscal policy, global rate shifts, and international geopolitics all colliding at once in April 2026.
Section 5. Essential disclaimers and next steps.
We've covered a lot of deep macroeconomic ground today, showing exactly how these puzzle pieces fit together. But before we wrap up, please note that this explainer is strictly for educational and informational purposes. We're just observing the economic weather here, based on public data verified up to April 29, 2026. This is absolutely not investment advice or financial counseling. We aren't taking any ideological sides either. We're just letting the open data tell the story. And remember, past performance is never a guarantee of future results.
If you enjoyed dissecting this data as much as I did, I highly encourage you to follow the Macroeconomy IA channel. They provide incredible, data-driven insights bridging macroeconomics, artificial intelligence, and technology. Make sure to access the links below and stay tuned for new publications. And I'll leave you with this final thought. If a single geopolitical event or a shift in the US Fed's mood can alter the flow of billions of dollars overnight, how fragile is our definition of a normal global economy? Keep questioning the data and keep learning. Catch you next time.